this Valentine's Day, choosing yourself. Valentine's Day is my favourite day of the year, so much so that my youngest daughter's middle name is Valentine. With Valentine's Day approaching, I found myself reflecting less on romance and more on the year that has passed, and the ways I began choosing myself. Of all the episodes, this has by far been the hardest one to write because it's so close to my heart. The topic of self-love has been spoken about so much. I wrote this today wondering whether I should tie in the studies, the research, the philosophies, but instead I'm choosing to write it from my heart and from my lived experience. If it resonates with even one person, my heart is full. I've spoken in previous episodes about how I'm a Virgo and in Vedic astrology a Kritika Nakshatra. The main characteristic of both is that they're highly critical by nature. I am by far my own worst critic, and for a long time I didn't realize how poorly I was treating myself. I prioritized everyone else's needs even when I was barely coming up for air. And honestly, as a mum, self-love really is easier said than done, because at one point your children are literally part of your body. People say that as your kids grow, it's like having your heart beating outside your chest, and that feels painfully accurate. After having children, especially in the early years, so much of you belongs to them. Breastfeeding, sleepless nights, physical recovery, emotional labour, hormonal changes, and babies just want to be close to their mum. In my entire lifetime, holding my girls, carrying them in a carrier, co-sleeping, all of it filled my cup so deeply, but at the same time it was physically and mentally exhausting. As someone who's done it twice, I don't think you can really find balance in the early years, and that is just part of parenthood. After my first daughter was born, I would lock myself in our tiny walk-in wardrobe, the only space that was dark enough, with white noise humming from my phone as I rocked her back and forth for hours, hoping that she would take a nap. I refused babysitters, night nurses, help of any kind, because I was convinced that if anything went wrong, I would never forgive myself. I made baby food from scratch, bought the puree maker. I wanted to do things my way. What can I say? I'm a Virgo. I have stories for days, but this episode isn't about despair. It's about what all of that taught me. One of the most important things I've learnt since becoming a mother is this. At some point, you have to choose yourself, not only for your survival, but for your children too. When I was in high school, every year for Valentine's Day, our school ran a tradition where you could purchase roses or serenades, and music students would come and sing a song to you. My friends and I would buy roses for each other. On Valentine's Day, during morning assemblies, we'd all receive them. Honestly, it was a really cute concept. I spoke in my first episode about my love for the old Love Song Dedications radio show and how symbolic that show was for me growing up. Love, to me, was something external. My parents were in an arranged marriage and I grew up without a clear model of healthy reciprocal love. So instead, I learnt from films, television and music. Looking back now, I see how idealistic I was about love and how much I was searching for it beyond myself. Adulthood brought marriage, distance, and eventually relocation. And after 2.5 years of long distance, I moved to support my husband as he built his dental practices. Alongside a full-time career in marketing, I worked closely with him, at some points doing his accounts, payroll, marketing, refurbishments, and this was all by choice. Then motherhood arrived and I gave myself to it completely. I had wanted to be a mother for as long as I could remember, and as my daughters grew and thrived, my own health was deteriorating. In my community and even within my own family, I saw women give endlessly. Pouring outward was a given, and pouring inwards, not so much. Eventually I had to ask myself whether this version of womanhood was sustainable, and whether it was the version I wanted my daughters to inherit. In 2020, soon after my eldest daughter was born, I began experiencing symptoms of achalasia, though I didn't think too much of it at the time. Over the years, it's worsened, and today it affects every aspect of my life, every meal, even a glass of water, going out, and my sleep at night. My achalasia diagnosis was by far one of the hardest things for me to accept, because I wore the badge of being fit and healthy with pride, and I had worked hard for it. I started going to the gym at 18 and I have exercised consistently ever since. I love food and I love wholesome homemade food, and I've always been mindful of what I consume. When I first experienced symptoms and was told a few years ago it was likely achalasia, I wasn't worried. In my mind, I just need to get through those early years of parenting and I'd find my way back to the old me. There's nothing healthy eating and exercise can't fix, right? Apparently not. And when it comes to self-love, if there's anything I've beaten myself up about the most, it's this diagnosis. Despite being told by multiple doctors that the cause is unknown and that I couldn't have prevented it, I'd convinced myself that my stress and my inability to manage my emotions caused it. No one could convince me otherwise. In the last year, I've slowly begun granting myself some grace, because God knows I need to. I accepted help and finally came to terms with the fact that I'd need medical intervention. And the whole process has been bittersweet. Sad because I never imagined this day would come, but hopeful because it offers me the chance to live a reality very different from what I've endured for the past 5 years, and that has been really difficult. I feel fortunate to be at this point now. Navigating the medical system can be so daunting at times, and I'm grateful to know that there's a light at the end of this tunnel. I absolutely hate talking about this topic, and honestly, I sometimes wish the astrologer hadn't told me to speak and write about my life. I've thought many times about shelving this podcast altogether, but I promised myself that no matter what happens, I would stick with this until my youngest girl heads to kindy next year, then reevaluate. I genuinely enjoy writing, reading, and editing it, and I often have to remind myself that the whole purpose of this space was to just channel my creativity consistently and have something for myself outside of being a mum. Showing up publicly with my honest thoughts and feelings has been therapeutic at times, and it's also been deeply uncomfortable at others. But I guess life is about being your truest self and allowing yourself to grow. So with that all said, what has actually changed? 2 years ago, I came across a creator called Margarita Nazarenko on TikTok. She is a wife, a mother, and a host of the podcast Becoming Her. Alongside voices like Anna Christina and her philosophy of being unbothered as a woman, I was introduced to an entirely new framework for how women can show up in the world. At first I resisted because, especially as a mum in her mid-30s, the whole thing felt tacky and selfish. But through Margarita's podcast Being Her, I realised a lot of things, and one in particular is that parenting is a long game. Burning the candle at both ends isn't noble, it's just unsustainable. How you love yourself becomes the template for every relationship that follows, whether that's romantic, family, platonic, and professional. And what I've learned is that if you want healthy relationships in your life, you have to truly believe you're worthy of them. And that belief is built by choosing yourself again and again. As the saying goes, you can't pour from an empty cup. This year, I returned to the idea of love, not romantically but personally, and using the 5 love languages by Dr. Gary Chapman and turning them inwards. So starting off with acts of service, dressing with intention, even if that's for school drop-offs or a Woolworths run. Nothing over the top. Often for me, that means just wearing activewear in my colour palette that feels comfortable and good. Number 2, creating this podcast and blog and reminding myself that my thoughts, words, and creativity are worthy of a platform. Words of affirmation. Number 1, retiring self-deprecation. I love to laugh, but I was constantly making jokes at my own expense, and that needed to go. Number 2, speaking to myself with care and respect. One of the best practices I've seen is pinning a childhood photo of yourself onto your bathroom mirror, so as a reminder of who you're speaking to when you're being so hard on yourself. Gifts. A babysitter. I refused to outsource childcare for so long, but last year I had a babysitter for 12 hours a week, which gave me enough time for Pilates, walks, grocery shopping alone, or simple pleasures like a massage, browse, or shopping. Quality time. Number 1, completing my colour analysis course. Number 2, sauna sessions. Being in a sauna feels like a confessional. It's too hot to hold on to your thoughts for too long, and without your phone, you're forced to purge and be present. Physical touch. Number 1, being consistent with exercise. So that's 5 days a week of whether it's Pilates, walking, running, or swimming. This wasn't possible in the first year with either of my girls. They were attached to me, and leaving for an hour wasn't realistic. Back then it would look like 30 to 45 minutes at night after they'd slept a few times a week, and that was enough. Number 2, which is the most important thing. I tell myself now that I love that I'm capable of feeling things on such a deeper level, and not everyone in the world gets that, and it's actually a really beautiful thing. Just in the last few days, I started crying in the car, and afterwards I felt so much better. There's a lot unfolding, and I need to allow myself to feel it fully. Crying is somatic release. When you allow yourself to cry without shame, you're letting your body do what it needs to regulate and soften. You're listening to the tightness in your chest and responding to it instead of overriding it. For people who are used to holding it all together, especially mothers, this is often the hardest love language to learn. So if you take anything from this episode, let it be this. Choose yourself again and again. This Valentine's Day and every day after. Buy yourself the flowers and set the standard. I know all too well how hard this can be in a busy life, but even just 5 minutes of your time for a few deep breaths can be so healing. A woman who values herself doesn't wait to be chosen, she already has. And a woman that has chosen herself and fills her own cup shows up in this world in a very different light. For a reminder that it's never too late to begin again, 2 films I love are The Women and Second Act. Finally, my serenades for this week, and I have 2 songs. The first one is Let It All Work Out by Lil Wayne, and the second one is Gonna Love Me by Tiana Taylor.